Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then we're available on demand and available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same models of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission? To support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian, trans, student youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor Fay What. She's a radio and television personality and has a popular broadcast, the Fay What Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning program right here on the Happening Out Television Network. It's Monday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern online or on Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV. She's a hostess and an MC for many South Florida events. She's an animal advocate and owner of Fay's Fur Family, where she believes pets are family. Welcome, Fay.
Hi, everyone. You know, I'm finally nice and not tired from Stonewall. Oh my God, you know that Sunday? It's Wednesday and it took all these days out. You know that I woke up at 12:30 on Sunday, like after noon. But I'm fine and I'm okay.
Why is that different than Monday
Any other
through
day?
Friday?
You're right. I didn't stop and think about that.
Is your hair dry yet?
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
See, I look like a wet dog. Did you see how wet I was that day? And not in a good way, folks. All right.
By the way, the most noted attribute of wet dogs is the smell.
Well, you're sitting closest, tell us.
Let's welcome John Hayden. Be quiet. Let's welcome John Hayden. He's a journalist for 28 years. He now works for several outlets, including Out South Florida, as senior reporter and community editor, covering politics, entertainment, and local events directly impacting the LGBTQ plus community. John's interviewed everyone from presidents to Oscar winners. This weekend, he's going to bibbity bobbity boop his way to the Parker for the Gay Men's Chorus of South Florida's big Disney concert. It's going to be a lot of fun. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much. I am very excited about it, and hopefully after the show, there'll be a little chitty bang banging going on.
Oh.
Are you wearing ears? Like the gay ears? Like the gay Disney ears?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, by the way, the Out South Florida logo, it's starting to grow on me.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's only taken weeks.
Our 4th edition comes out tomorrow, so very excited about that.
Maybe it's John not growing on me.
Oh, there's stuff growing on me. Now let's welcome anchor TriniDaddy. Trini is a concert musician, director, and artist in the South Florida area. He currently is a violinist and pianist with the Miami City Ballet and director for the Seminole Theater Players at the historic Seminole Theater in Homestead, Florida. He is also one of the permanent hosts of Happening Out. Welcome, Trini. Good to see you.
Good to see everybody. It's been a little while since I've been here. I am happy to comment on some topics and not hear any more about Fay's personal life. Let's welcome Mark Pettitt. Mark is a pioneering
is Donkey
traveler
Kong in the house? Because it appears to be on.
and coordinated the very first gay parade stayed ever on the continent of Antarctica.
Maybe
that's why it's cold.
Don't laugh in my intro.
But don't
He's
let
messing up your intro.
that sweet smile fool you. He knows how to take charge. And as a former Mr. Sawmill Leather Sir, he and his husband Luke run linksbyluke.com, the chainmail, harness, and pride accessory shop. And by day, he's a leadership coach and trainer with the largest leadership development company in the world that I guess shall remain nameless. Welcome, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you, Trini, for that enthusiastic
We're clearly going to have to move faster.
Okay.
Going off the rails really quickly.
I'm trying, Al. I'm trying. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight. And this evening, we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, June 21st.
And some assistance on our timer, please. First up, let's queer up breaking news. Students, parents, and authors sue Florida school district over book ban. 6 Florida students, their parents, and 2 authors have sued a Central Florida school district yesterday for banning some students' access to a children's book about 2 male penguins who raise a baby penguin together. Last year, the school board of Lake County near Orlando barred students who are in kindergarten through 3rd grade from accessing And Tango Makes 3, a 2005 book based on a true story about 2 male penguins at the New York City's Central Park Zoo who adopted and raised an orphan penguin chick named Tango. The district said at the time that its decision was based on Florida's parental rights in education law. Last month, DeSantis signed a bill that expands the law all the way to the 12th grade in high school. The new measure prohibits sexual orientation or gender identity instruction in pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. Tuesday's lawsuit argues that the law is vague and overbroad and that the district, by restricting access to And Tango Makes 3, violated the First Amendment. The authors, Peter Parnell and Justin Richardson, and 6 students aged 5 to 12 joined the lawsuit through their parents or legal guardians because they're interested in reading the book for a variety of reasons. This is very big news. The reason this is very big news is finally, and my goodness, it's only taken us a year and 4 months to get to the legal challenge. The most important aspect of this filing yesterday against Lake County is going to be the First Amendment claim. Because what they're going to have to now do is defend that kindergarten through 3rd grade do not have constitutional First Amendment rights. And as a result, it's going to be a slog uphill for them to defend that stance that a book like Tango is one that should not be accessible to students in a classroom or a library situation. If I was betting $1, we're going to see a stay from this. Then if I was betting a second $1, the federal court is going to sustain this lawsuit. Now, I'm not going to yet bet my third $1 on the Supreme Court's decision on the constitutionality of the First Amendment right. But this is a very good sign of what is going to come next from this incredibly vague and hateful legislation that has taken place in Florida.
You know what's interesting to me is the ages of the students named in the lawsuit. Ages 5 through age 12. What is that? That's kindergarten through roughly 6th or 7th grade. So they're basically putting it out there so that all the defendants will have standings, not just the parents. It will also be the students who are being denied access as well. So I think that's a very key point that I don't want to get lost in here, because this is fighting not just last year's pre-K through 3, it's now fighting, pardon me, through the 8th grade or 12th grade, depending on which particular version of the law you're looking at.
To take a highlighter to the point, and it might have been missed in the story that we just did, the claimants say they want to read the book.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of the First Amendment. It's not whether they've read the book, because we know preemptively what we're going to hear. Well, you can see the book someplace else. And everyone will want that argument to be made. So it's free speech outside the environment of a classroom in a Florida school. They've set the state up to Okay, answer that question. They want to read this book. If they want to read this book, do they have a constitutional right to read this book? Not that you can find the book someplace else. Not that you can find the book online. And I just add to your point.
That you could read it in their school.
And
that is the point of it.
That is the constitutional argument.
This is so freaking ridiculous. Like, it's just beyond ridiculous. I remember when we did the story when they initially had taken this book out and Tango Makes Three, you know? I mean, and you know, since they extended Don't Say Gay to 12th grade, you're telling me that a 17-year-old can't read a story about two penguins adopting a baby? Like,
They're very delicate.
they're very delicate individuals at 12th grade.
Yeah.
Well, and there's some other challenges, I think, coming up around the country. I noticed a story in particular that I thought was a little piece of good news on this, where Illinois banned basically the banning of books in their public library system. So I'm sure that there's going to be a conservative group that then challenges that. But Al, I 100% agree. It's going to go federal. And whether it's the Tango case or Illinois or a similar challenge, the First Amendment is going to have to be weighed in this context.
Well, if I'm a betting man, the 5-year-old, and they don't have the constitutional right to do that. I don't think that's going to get affirmed.
Wait, explain clear, because if I don't understand, many viewers.
Well, you were mentioning that the question that you think is going to be the main issue is whether a 5-year-old has a constitutional right to be able to read this book, and
you're saying you don't think the court will say they have a constitutional right?
Correct.
Oh.
What about the 8-year-old or the 12-year-old?
I don't think. No, I don't think so. I think another question that kind of comes before this one is who decides what goes into the libraries to begin with before we're even taking them out. Because, of course, there's plenty of books, I'm sure that you would agree, don't belong, pornographic books, whatever, that belong in an elementary school library. But,
what would you say is a pornographic book?
A book that has explicit sex scenes, that's talking about sexual positions, about gangbangs, talking about all that stuff.
An anatomy book.
Gangbangs?
No, I'm not saying gangbangs.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm saying, but like an anatomy book would be, showing sexual things.
Well, okay,
but as I stated before, I said things of a sexual nature, not as far as human growth and development, but I'm talking pornographic gangbangs, things like that.
Yeah, but that's not an issue at all.
Yes, that is in a public library.
Not in a school public library?
Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. It's like, what are the guidelines and who is deciding that? As I don't know who is making the decisions about which book, who's reviewing that and in the school board. And I think that is kind of another question that we have to have before we're talking about.
Well, Trini, I will tell you, I know who is deciding which books are not in the library, and that's any one parent. Right now, under the current law, any one parent can come in and say, I don't like this book, and then they have to review it. And then I don't like this book. And the fact is, it's essentially a public library. Parents move into certain school districts, and we know that. And that's been going on for a while. Parents move into a district, they send their children to a particular school, and it's a public school. And they shouldn't be able to have one parent from some right-wing nut be able to come in and say, no, this. And
I 100% agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with the position that the child should be able to look at two penguins. That's not really a sexual story. It's just two animals. It's ridiculous. I'm just saying that when, in the context of the book bans and the constitutionality of it, that's what I was just addressing.
Just in regards to the First Amendment, though, I'm not aware of any way in which the First Amendment rights of a younger person are more limited than adults. In fact, I think it actually goes the other way around, that, for an adult to yell fire in a movie theater, like that's something that's not covered under free speech. But if a kid does that, you're like, okay, that's a kid being a kid. So I think if anything, kids have more freedom or kids have an even bigger right to free speech in the First Amendment than anybody else.
Well, How could that even be true, though? Because if you have a parent that can tell your child, a 5-year-old, you can't say this, then the child is not going to say, I have
and Mark,
it's the government
in
saying
clarity,
yes.
And see, that's
Congress
a real
shall
important
make
distinction
no law
here. That this lawsuit is saying that they have a constitutional right to free speech, which is an access granted through the government entity. And in this instance, the government entity is the school. And so you can't abridge this free speech access through the government entity. What happens in the family unit of what the parent wants to happen in the family is a different issue.
Right, but the school has to have their contract with the parent of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. They're not making a contract with the child, they're making it with the parent if you're enrolling the child in school. So, I just don't see that this is even a remote possibility, but I'm curious to see how it...
And Mark, I have to respectfully disagree with your take on children having more access and more constitutional freedoms. Supreme Court, well, I was going to say Supreme Court's more liberal than the current makeup of the court have upheld parental notifications on abortion and other types of health care. So I don't know how far that particular argument would go.
Yeah, agreed.
And again, I remind production I'm having difficulty following a clock. Next, let's square up religion. Catholic Church releases document calling for support for women and LGBTQ+. An unprecedented global canvassing of Catholics has called for the Church to take concrete steps to promote women to decision-making roles for a radical inclusion of the LGBTQ+ community, and for new accountability measures to check how bishops exercise authority. The Vatican yesterday released the synthesis of a 2-year consultation process, publishing a working document that will form the basis of discussion for a big meeting of bishops and lay people in October. The Synod, as it is known, is a key priority of Pope Francis, reflecting his vision of a church that is more about the faithful rank and file than it is of its priests. The document highlights key concerns that emerged during the consultation process, which began at the local parish level and concluded with 7 continent-wide assemblies. It flagged the devastating impact that the clergy's sexual abuse crisis has had on the faithful, costing the hierarchy its credibility and sparking calls for structural changes to remove their near absolute power. The document also asks what concrete steps the Church can take to better welcome LGBTQ+ people and others who have felt marginalized and unrecognized by the Church, so that they don't feel judged. And that includes the poor, migrants, the elderly, disabled, as well as those by tribal or caste being excluded. It's a big moment, another big moment for the Catholic Church. Pope Francis is trying to swim upstream of the Catholic stream. And in essence, that's what's happening here. I think he wants to get to a place that he politically, even though he's Pope, can't get to yet. And in various different ways, we've reported this year, we're halfway through the year, at least 5 or 6 different stories this year that are similar in nature. This being the most significant of saying when the October synod happens, these are the issues that we're going to talk about, of which generally the LGBTQ community is absolutely cheering for. Greater access and acceptance, women, LGBT, migrants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whether it can be accomplished because of the absolute power that bishops, cardinals, and priests have in the Church, we will see. But the one thing that is clear that's really working against the Church now is the horrendous sexual abuse record that they have. And this is a tangible consequence of that terrible record. And now they're saying, no, wait, your power is not absolute, because if it is absolute, you act in an absolute way which harms children by sexual abuse. And we're going to put a stop to that.
You know, one phrase that I really like in this story was that they want radical inclusion of LGBTQ. Here's the thing, any inclusion, hell, even any acknowledgement is radical.
Yeah.
When you look at the bounds of the Catholic Church and organized religion in general, but especially the Catholic Church, and in a place where the lay people have labored for decades, if not centuries or millennia, for them to start to be empowered for whatever topics they choose is really a big step forward. I know that there's a group in Indianapolis, which is my hometown, Catholic Allies. They have gotten a couple of parishes to have welcoming services for LGBTQ+. Shout out to St. Thomas Aquinas. And my old home parish, Christ the King, is doing something very pro-community. So it's happening at a level. The problem is it's small little dots. You know, it's Catholic.
Catholic Church?
Yeah, Catholic Church, St. Thomas Aquinas on the north side of Indy. But it's those little dots. It's that dot on the north side of Indianapolis. It's that dot outside of Springfield, Illinois. Those supporters, this could empower them. And that's what I think is exciting, is the potential for what could happen. Even if we don't reach the ultimate goal, hell, getting 25% of the way there would be monumental.
But is this a bit of a moral turnaround, or is it really desperately needed marketing for a church that is losing numbers massively?
Can both?
I think they can.
I think Pope Francis wants it to be the moral turnaround. Yeah.
Can both be yes? Yes, it's this, and yes, it's this. Isn't that acceptable or not?
No, I guess it could be both, but I think that requires a little bit more faith in the Catholic Church than I was raised with by recovering Catholics.
You're a recovering Catholic. Do you have that faith? So you hear
I have that hope.
Yeah, it's hope. Okay.
I laughed so hard when I heard this story.
Okay.
Because I just thought, Francis hates these guys. Like, they must be duking it out. Like, he just keeps saying things that have been anti-Catholic tradition for years. Yeah. And he knows that if, like, by putting it out there, like, you know, he's supposed to condemn something, and at one point he goes, well, who am I to judge? And they were probably at the Vatican like, this motherfucker. Like, you know? So it's like, that's
probably the exact
what he
quote.
Said.
Yeah.
Vatican.
Yeah.
I feel like he is radically against.
It's printed on Catholic Church.
Yeah.
They open their robe.
Hashtag mother effort, right? Listen, the Catholic Church forever, okay? Think about the priest role and the nuns roles, right? They're not going to change anytime soon, folks. They're just basically giving us crumbs so we stop paying attention to the horrible abuse. We just did a story the other day, I think it was Brazil. There was 2,500 cases that they have found of children abuse, okay? There is no worse abuse on earth than to sexually abuse a child. They are effed for the rest of their lives, okay? So it's like, hey, LGBT, hey, women, we're going to put you in, you know, don't wait for it because it's not going to happen, folks.
We're not sure if we want to join the club anymore.
Recovery. One illustration of the crumbs, maybe misdirection. Fay and I, just as an illustration, Fay and I were in Italy last year with Sunshine Cathedral, and the Vatican approved the Sunshine Cathedral to have a Eucharist, a communion service in the catacombs in Rome.
And they knew we were gay.
And they knew that
was what I asked. I go, how do they know we're gay right now? I was like, I don't want to get thrown out of here.
They had never approved a request like that ever before. To the illustration points that we're talking about, yeah, they may be throwing some crumbs there to maybe misdirect from the real big issues. And there also may be intention to Trini's point that Pope Francis is just sitting there in the back rooms, just duking it out with whoever is trying to hold on to their Fox News radical GOP in Italy, just like we have.
And I mean, this Pope is probably not going to be around for a very long time. So can the next Pope, pardon my ignorance, just go back and change everything to the way it was?
Well, here's the one other little point to this, is that I started going down the rabbit hole of papal infallibility, because that was a huge issue for any kind of progression, is that if a pope had said it before, or a previous pope had said, made some decree, gays are bad, divorced people, can't take communion or anything like that. That's what it had to be, because God ordained him and he can't be wrong. Yeah. And so I think with Pope Francis, that he is like giving himself a little space from John Paul to say, like, I'm just going to wait. And now I'm going to rewrite the entire Catholic dogma about what is tradition. So I can't wait for that day.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, next, we queer up out South Florida. Will Wilton Manors face backlash from Stonewall Pride? We protested, we partied, now we wait. It's safe to assume Governor DeSantis' toadies, like the so-called Moms for Liberty, infiltrated last weekend's Stonewall Pride Parade and Street Festival. With cameras in hand, they were looking for something scandalous they can send to their anti-LGBTQ+ overlords to justify further oppression of our community. A new law to protect children had drag entertainers and parade organizers on guard and our enemies on the prowl. New rules were created and old rules were more strictly enforced to avoid anything that could be construed as harmful to a child. Family friendly is the term. The thing is, others get to determine what family means, and for that matter, what friendly means. There were drag entertainers and people dressed in drag to support, but it was very low-key. Will it be enough? Will the self-immolation of our own traditions and culture be enough to placate the fascists in Florida? Or will some out-of-context snap or video be enough to have FDLE send officers here to remove city employees or officials for allowing it? Will the Department of Business and Professional Regulations sneak in and quietly close businesses at the heart of our community? Stonewall Pride is over, but the fight against the evil all around us is just beginning. For now, we wait. Whatever happens out South Florida will bring you the latest on how our community fights back. It's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking and it's sad. What I saw this last weekend at Stonewall Pride depressed me because there were so many supporters there, but they weren't loud. The protest was there, but the fun wasn't there. The energy wasn't there. The drag queens weren't up there riling up on the stage. The entertainers that we know and have loved for 10 years, 15 years or more in this community, they were muted.
You saw them, they were like stiff on their floats. Like wherever they were like they were afraid to be themselves.
They couldn't, because they maybe didn't want to consider as being performing in that space.
Or dancing
so they just
or
kind of
anything.
stay still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so depressing.
It is very depressing. And it's frightening that we have acquiesced as far as we have. And for the sake of our community, we need to start building back now so we can get back to our traditions. This is our culture that's on the line.
Yeah.
They are killing our culture. One law, one pride, one event at a time. Yeah. We have to stand up and say no.
Look, and there were a lot of people there. There were a lot of people for the rain, etc., right? But for those of you who let the rain stop you, shame on you, okay? Because that was the time to really, we should have been out there no matter what. We were out there no matter what, and it was pouring.
In heels and makeup.
In heels and makeup. That was the time for you to be out there. I hope that doesn't happen July 2nd for the We the People March. You know, like if it rains, you homos better get out there. We need to be out there.
She's talking to you.
I am talking to you.
Well, I have a plan.
Okay.
I have a plan to fight this.
All right.
An umbrella?
My plan is that because this law, the way that it's written, is so vague and so overbroad, that we need to infiltrate all the homophobic, like the largest demographics of homophobic festivals. We need to go to the biker festivals. We need to go to everything that could be considered not family friendly. And we need to get that footage. We need to go to Mardi Gras. We need to go to all these other places to show.
So we need to bury other places for us to get ahead?
No, I mean that when,
Yeah.
I think that we need to make the case that it is something that is targeted against us and that it's not about family friendly.
I'm not sure everybody, viewers will, especially our younger viewers, will understand, but that is a very Larry Kramer observation, because that was exactly what ACT UP said in 1992. Nope, we're going to smash it right into your face. And
But there was
exactly what they said. Do you know who Larry Kramer is?
Vaguely.
Okay.
Not like you do.
Okay, all right. All right. One other thing that I want to say in terms of the feelings that you said about Saturday, if it's true, and I think it is true, then can we at the same time saying that this is the energy and the protest and what the vibe at Stonewall Pride was, and it could be representative of any pride in Texas or Florida, certainly, but let's say in Florida. If it is true, and I do think it's true, let's give credit to Governor DeSantis, presidential candidate DeSantis. We've gone into halftime and he's ahead by 14 points. That's what's happened. He's winning the game right now, and we're at halftime because that's what he was able to accomplish on Saturday. That's exactly what he wanted to accomplish on Saturday.
Ahead of who?
In terms of marginalizing the control of the LGBTQ community. He's accomplished what he wanted to do. The vagueness of the law, the vagueness of displaying genitals. Who displays their genitals? Come on, they didn't do that before. Last year at Stonewall Pride, they did not do that.
No.
He's won going into the locker rooms of halftime. Now the question is, what is our community going to do coming out of the end of halftime for the next 2 quarters, which is your point. I hope on July 2nd. And we've got like 25 things over the course of the next 15 months. Are we going to show up or are we not? Are we going to play the second half or are we not? If not, we know what the outcome of the game is right now at halftime while we sit in the locker rooms.
We've lost.
We're getting our asses kicked. Yeah. And Stonewall Pride is a reflection of that. We love Stonewall Pride, but your feelings are a representation of where we're at. Let's start there. One other thing that I want to say, there is a ray of hope. The ray of hope, frankly, was not Stonewall Pride to me on Saturday. I'm right there with Fay. We sat and watched it. Our eye is just evaluating what we're watching. We're not in it. We're sitting outside the fishbowl watching it on that main stage. The next day I went to our house. Our house and our beloved Athena Dion. It was the first time that I have been there since the dust up with Department of Professional Regulation that we talked about and their attack on their liquor license, etc. It's a sold out 11 o'clock event, completely sold out. 90% of the people in the restaurant and on the patio, there must have been 300 people at this brunch. Efficient, business, efficient. And through the process, every queen is very specific and intentioned of how they're going to display. Did it affect the show one iota? It absolutely did not. Our house Sunday, RuPaul was world class Sunday. This is post Ron DeSantis. Our house has actually gotten better since the attacks. 90% of the room is straight.
Yep. Even more,
women, black, boyfriends, girlfriends, women celebrating anniversaries, birthdays, bachelor, whatever. They start one of the big anthem songs, This Is Me, or one of those songs, and the entire crowd, not the gay people, all of the straight people get into This Is Me or the song that they were playing that represents it, and then the room just spontaneously starts chanting, gay, gay, gay. What? Our house Sunday. Up. We're going to come out of the locker rooms in the second quarter. Governor, we're going to kick your ass. That was Stonewall Pride.
Next, let's queer a business. Elon Musk declares cis and cisgender slurs after retaliation towards the ultra-right. Twitter's executive chair, Elon Musk, said late Tuesday the words cisgender and cis are considered slurs under the social media platform's content policy, the latest policy change implemented by the billionaire. Musk has made multiple controversial remarks on gender identity issues and even promoted transphobic content since buying Twitter last year. In April, Twitter altered the slurs section of its hateful content policy page to remove a line that prohibited targeted misgendering or dead naming of transgender individuals. In the tweet announcing the policy change, Musk wrote, quote, repeated targeted harassment against any account will cause the harassing accounts to receive, at minimum, temporary suspensions. The words cis or cisgender are considered slurs on this platform, end quote. Musk's comments was in response to a user's tweet claiming they were harassed after tweeting they reject the word cis and don't wish to be referred to as such. Elon Musk is a turd, okay? Like, just plain and simple, he's a freaking turd, all right?
You just got kicked off Twitter.
Honey, I left Twitter a while ago, bitches. I'm sorry. The second that he allowed people to start saying the N-word and stuff like that, I was out, okay? So you can be a fascist, you can be a racist, you can be whatever you want, honey, but you can't say cis and you can't say cisgender on Twitter. Enjoy it.
Elon Musk is a liar. Elon Musk is a liar because he goes, free speech, free speech, absolutely free speech, unless you say something I don't like.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a liar, period.
All right, I am about to get kicked off Twitter. I'm tweeting right now, cisgender, FU at Elon Musk.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, follow me, please, while you still can.
That'll be about 4 minutes long. Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that this guy, and has people's minds been changed about who he is, because maybe just about 2 years ago, people were still touting him as like this, the person to watch. This is the person that's going to change the world for the better. And now
he's going to get us on another planet. I mean,
I don't know if he's
a
genius. I think maybe he rides the backs of some other people to get done. And he was already very privileged and rich prior to all of this. So
wait, I'm still with John. He's riding the backs of other people.
That is so hot.
Yeah.
But cisgender, I mean, just to make sure we all understand what cisgender means,
Please.
just because I want somebody to tell it to me just to make sure I got it right.
I thought you were going to explain it to us.
No, I'm asking. Just for anybody watching, maybe they might need to know, because perhaps. I think I know, but I just want to make
I
sure.
don't know why we love Trini.
The gender that you're assigned at birth matches what you identify with.
Right.
So you're
a cisgender male.
Right, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure there was nothing else to it, because it makes no sense to do what he's doing.
And Elon Musk is saying, if you try to tell me you're a male identifying as a male, you're from birth, you are bullying those people that want to say and suggest other things. It's subterfuge to talk about gender identity, and especially the trans community. It's just another sophisticated reason. And by the way, I don't know if I've shared recently, Elon Musk is a liar. He's a liar. He does not embrace free speech. But I do want to get one other thing in. He is a genius. He's a genius. You do not create the efforts that he has done in technology in the world. There's Ford, Edison, Musk. Now, there's lots been written that Edison was a horrible person, and there's been tremendous amounts of things written that Ford is a terrible person. It does not diminish the significance of their genius. Nothing will diminish the significance of Elon Musk's genius. Probably, from a technology standpoint, had more impact in the 21st century than any other person alive. But he's still a liar. And he's still an idiot. You can be a genius and an idiot simultaneously, which is what Elon Musk is.
Next, let's queer up politics. Democratic presidential hopeful RFK Jr. says trans frogs mean the water is turning kids trans.
I see these huge levels of depression and despair, loneliness in kids, and I don't think that there's a single cause to it. And I think blaming it on, depression about climate is probably oversimplistic. And in fact, I think a lot of the problems we see in kids, and particularly boys, it's probably underappreciated that how much of that is coming from chemical exposures, including a lot of the sexual dysphoria that we're seeing. They're swimming through a soup of toxic chemicals today, and many of those are endocrine disruptors. There's atrazine throughout our water supply. Atrazine, by the way, if you in a lab put atrazine in a tank full of frogs, it will chemically castrate and forcibly feminize every frog in there, and 10% of the frogs, the male frogs, will turn into fully viable females.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. thinks that chemicals in the water supply are turning kids trans. The Democratic presidential hopeful's crackpot theory involving male frogs turning into viable females is literally right out of Jurassic Park. On a recent episode of Anti-Trans media figure Jordan Peterson's Daily Wire podcast, Kennedy blamed huge levels of depression and despair in kids on chemical exposure. He claimed, quote, "I think a lot of the problems we see in kids, and particularly boys, it's probably underappreciated how much of that is coming from chemical exposures, including a lot of sexual dysphoria that we're seeing. They're swimming through a soup of toxic chemicals today, and many of those are endocrine disruptors. There's atrazine throughout our water supply. If you in a lab put atrazine in a tank full of frogs, it will chemically castrate and forcibly feminize every frog in there. And 10% of the frogs, the male frogs, will turn into fully viable females able to produce viable eggs. If it's doing that to frogs, there's a lot of other evidence that it's doing it to human beings as well," end quote. However, Twitter users were quick to ridicule Kennedy's absurd claim. So the first thing I thought of, let's get FayWhat some atrazine. Then the second thought I had was, This reminds me so much of all the televangelists that I used to listen to forcibly in my house, is that they're very good at what they do, which is they take nuggets of truth. And I had to look up atrazine, and I had to look up any of these studies to see what grains and kernels of truth there are. And there are grains of truth in what he is saying with this chemical and with the frogs and feminizing properties.
That's what makes a great lie.
Exactly. So they take little things like that, and then they say, would it then be a stretch if we say all these kids who are on drugs, that maybe the drugs that they're on are contributing to some of their problems, which I agree with. I think we are over-chemicalizing our kids. And then they said, well, then would it be a stretch if these kids who are trans, it's probably just because of that, and it's all chemical, and we need to save these children. So he does, I mean, it's not a very good job, especially his delivery is not the best delivery, but somebody, it's a little froggy. That's great. Yeah, so I don't think anybody's really buying that. I think he's such a fringe candidate with his anti-vax stuff and all of the other garbage that he spews out there. But it's the political climate that we're living in for this election. Buckle up, everyone.
Well, it's like you said, he gets a few buzzwords that sound smart that none of us know. Atropine and endocrine and things like that. And they're like, oh,
better Google
science,
that.
Science, yeah. And just, and our production staff does a great job, but I just want to take a little issue with the lower third here. The word hopeful is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this particular thing. Democratic presidential hopeful. Democratic presidential crackpot is what he is.
I am so proud of you getting through that story without laughing hilariously and being a real news person.
Well,
I don't think I could have done that without just giggling.
I
agree if the laughing issue, if it wasn't so damn serious. First off, RFK, probably a sizable percentage of our audience doesn't even know who we're talking about in the reference of RFK. Robert Kennedy was a Democratic candidate and assassinated in California, and very likely would have been president of the United States. R.F. Kennedy is part of the legendary family of Boston and Massachusetts, including JFK and Camelot. And this is the namesake son of Camelot, of the family of Camelot. I've listened to him a number of times, and every time I look at him, and we saw it, I don't know if we have a static image of his face, I see his father and I see John Kennedy in his face. And so there it is. That's a Kennedy profile. I see it, except it's not real. That's the only thing you see that is Kennedy, is just his face, because he is the antithesis of everything his father ever said in America. The antithesis. Because this guy is batshit. Batshit. And the other thing, that's him. So he's dismissed. There's not a chance in the world for him. But the other really, I think, distressing thing on this story for all of us, I hope we're aware of, I am a free speechist. I embrace Elon Musk's philosophy that you should have free speech and free ideas and debate and discussion. And the reason is if you start there and you discuss, the circle gets wider and wider and wider. You bring more people in that contribute. They contribute different ideas, and you come to best conclusion. That is how democracy works. That's not what Jordan Peterson's doing. Jordan Peterson, who is a genius in his own right, and he is, and RFK Jr., what they're doing is they're starting from a conceptual idea of what they want to prove, and then discussing it and increasing the circle because of the set conclusion that they want to come to, which is the drugs is what causes ultimately getting to their anti-trans position. They don't want to get to truth. They want to use science to prove what their truth is, which is the complete opposite of democratic conversation. Mm-hmm. Jordan Peterson, therefore, becomes dangerous. And Robert Kennedy Jr., unfortunately for the family of Camelot, becomes a joke. That's why frogs are not funny.
Next, let's queer up gay culture. Elton John will not do U.S. residencies, says LGBTQ plus rights are moving backwards. Singer Elton John has spoken out against disgraceful anti-LGBTQ plus legislation being passed in Florida and across the U.S. The 76-year-old out singer spoke with Radio Times ahead of his headlining concert at Glastonbury Festival, which he claims will be his final UK show. In addition to discussing his ongoing Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour, John voiced his displeasure at the state of LGBTQ plus rights in the U.S., saying, quote, "It's all going pear-shaped in America. There's violence and anti-LGBTQ plus laws enacted in Florida, which are disgraceful. There's a law now that if you visit a doctor in Florida, they can refuse to treat you if you're gay, which I find just unbelievable," end quote. John was referring to the right to discriminate law signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in May. He added, quote, "We seem to be going backward and that spreads. It's like a virus that the LGBTQ plus movement is suffering." For John, who came out as bisexual in 1976 and gay in 1992, America has become a hotbed of homophobia. John, who founded the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which has raised more than $525 million and by its own estimation saved 5 million lives, expressed his deep unhappiness about the growing tide of homophobia, which he said extended to Britain. And being married to a Brit, I will tell you, it definitely does extend over to Britain. And during the 1980s and 1990s, they basically had this same version of Don't Say Gay, where it completely changed their education, even how kids talked.
I didn't know that.
It was that was how Luke went through school, was in a kind of Don't Say Gay era of the UK. It's called Section something. What was the name of the law? I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but it seems to be rolling back.
They're not doing that great right now with LGBTQ plus rights over there either. So I don't know what the hell, Elton, you're talking about. But I should have sold my ass last year to see you, except that your tickets were like $1,000, all up in the nosebleeds. But I should have sold my ass to go.
You know, it's one of the things that I think is good that he did this is we have the largest retirement community in the world is here in Florida. It's called the Villages. Every GOP presidential cycle, they land a plane at a private airstrip in the Villages, and Trump's been there twice to speak at the Villages. One of the things I love about this is when Elton John says, "You know, I'm not going to perform." I'm not going to come to Florida and perform. There's about 70% of the Villages that are the same age as Elton John.
And crying.
That goes, "Oh my gosh, wait, what? I'm not going to get to see Elton John one more time?" And then they stop to at least hear why he's not. So it puts LGBT rights in front of old people in Florida, which I think is great.
But here's the thing, and I love Elton John. I have loved him since I was a child. Like, somehow you just know who your people are, even before you know who you are, you know. And Elton, I knew, was one of my people. And he does a lot of great foundation, all that. That said, this isn't a real great leap towards martyrdom, defending our community. He says he's not going to do U.S. residencies. Well, first off, he's just finishing up an 18-year farewell tour, so he's ready for a break. Second of all, he says he's not going to do residencies. He's not saying he's not going to do shows. He says he's not going to come and park his ass at Caesars for a few weeks, a year, you know? So that's what he's saying. Also, keep in mind, he still supports our community with shows. When Russia passed their first main anti-LGBTQ law, perhaps the progenitor of LGBT, he still went to Moscow and I believe St. Petersburg and did his shows there, because he said we can't, by not going, we're robbing our people of their culture. So I'm really not quite sure what to make of this, except that he will still probably come back at some point and play
his farewell tour again.
His farewell. He's going to be Cher.
He's worse than Cher
of farewell.
Hey, please remind me when we go to dinner next, not to sit next to John, because the LGBTQ mafia. I I'm afraid to sit next to John.
It's going to be a little pink bullet that comes through that window.
Right? Exactly.
Then I better not say anything.
Come sit next to me, Trini. We'll be fine.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church right here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out Television Studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share the news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience, watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and or Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Fay What, John Hayden, TriniDaddy, and Mark Pettitt. Before we end our broadcast, we have one final story. Next, we queer up the big interview. Margaret Cho discusses comedy, politics, and more. Famous and infamous queer comedian, Margaret Cho recently came to South Florida while on the most recent comedy tour she had. Queer News Tonight anchor Greg Shapiro sat down with her before her show to discuss her comedy, the state of politics for LGBTQ plus Americans, and so much more.
I'd like to begin by welcoming Margaret Cho to the shrinking blue bubble that is Fort Lauderdale. I hope you're having a good time so far, and I'm wondering, do you have a favorite Fort Lauderdale or Wilton Manors spot when you come to town to visit?
No, I'll have to find one, you know. It's pretty rare. Like, I've only been here a few times, so it's never long enough to really see what's good and, you know, hang out. It's usually just do a show and then leave. So I need to find some places.
Well, we have plenty of recommendations for you, for sure. So your current tour is called Live and Livid, which is fitting because we have so much about which to be livid. Where would you like to begin?
Well, this is what's happening in my city, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence were disinvited to the Pride celebration at Dodger Stadium, which to me is like, they're like bending to controversy. There's no controversy. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are a very historic queer organization. They are really important to the community. Absolutely. It's not lewd. It's not sacrilegious.
Right,
I mean,
they're all dressed in, you know, habits and.
It's just like what it is, it's humor, it's celebration, it's something that's been going on for such a long time. They really have a misguided idea of what queerness is.
We raise money for people who are in need. We are always at bars and just being present for people on the street. A lot of people just need to have a talk with us. We are not tied to any religion, but we are not mocking anyone. Since 1979, we provide support. People have been suffering from guilt that they've been carrying, and we are just here to free the world from all the guilt, to spread universal joy. We are your favorite nuns, and we are here to show people that we love them.
It's very difficult. So this show is really, you know, a way to make sense of all of this real bizarre stuff that's happening.
Well, and multiple communities are being affected.
Yes.
I mean, it's the immigrant community and the queer community and women. I mean, everybody's under attack.
Everybody's under attack. It's really meaningful, though, to get to be in a place where you can stand and do comedy about these issues and really find some common ground and humor. The only way that we can survive it is to really laugh about it and kind of like absorb everything that way. And I think with that, you get some renewed energy and strength to fight it.
And thank you for making us laugh during these dark days. So when you perform in Florida or Texas or Tennessee, do you sort of feel like you have a responsibility to those audiences to kind of, I don't know, cuddle them or whatever, that you wouldn't do the same way in California or New York? Do you feel like you're putting a friendly face on this here?
Yeah, because, well, it's really exciting to be able to come to places where the legislation is going down, and it's really scary. And I think in particular in Florida, because there has been this like warnings against people from my community, from our community, coming here, living here. That's really scary.
Right.
You know, and also the fact that the other side are heavily armed. Like, that's the other end of it. Like, maybe we could fight about it if it was just a war of words, but it's bullets too.
Right. And and Florida, of course, guns are everywhere, so it's pretty frightening. So at the 2023 GLAAD Media Awards, Fire Island came away a big winner. We've talked about that when we've done interviews in the past, but what does it feel like now that this movie's won a big award? What does it feel like to be associated with that movie?
Finally, my girls have arrived!
Every gay person has a different relationship to gay friends. Not even that we're friends or family.
I think as a gay person, oftentimes you don't have the same relationship to your family as straight people do.
And this is why straight people hate us.
Really almost symbolic of father, mother, sisters, mostly sisters. I mean, I love the film. I love Joel and Bowen and Andrew. Everybody in the film was just amazing, and we had such a great time. But it's really a beautifully photographed, directed, acted, queer love story about one of the greatest queer vacations in the world. So it's really special. It's a great film, and I think, to me, it's just meaningful to have queer Asian American stories out there.
Absolutely. Could you see working with Andrew again, or Joel and Bowen? Yeah?
I have worked with Andrew again since the filming. We did a film together that's not out yet, but we did a film right after Fire Island. And, you know, Joel and Bowen, I'm going to hit them up for jobs forever. I mean, they are amazing, and they're the future. Yeah, for sure. So, but they're like my children.
Those kids, that's right, the kids. So you're currently working on a new movie, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I just finished a new film 3 days ago.
Oh, wow, okay.
So yeah, that was with Jesse Tyler Ferguson.
Oh, wow.
Which is really great.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful film called All That We Love.
Oh my, so it's more of a serious movie, or?
It's a drama comedy. It's a really, but it's also a queer love story. It's like it's very queer. It's very much my experience. It's a hag story. Finally, hags are front and center.
Good. It's about time.
It's the year of the hag. Jennifer Coolidge is leading the way.
For sure, for sure. So I recently saw you on the Game Show. And one of the things I thought was really cool was the way that you and some of the other interview people were talking about the queer presence in game shows.
Yes.
So do you have like an all-time favorite game show, and do you have a least favorite game show?
I think it's always going to be Hollywood Squares, you know, with Paul Lynde.
Yes. Yes.
And then, of course, Match Game, where you had Charles Nelson Riley, and then also Gong Show.
Right.
The queerness really comes through, and then Rip Taylor. Rip Taylor is such an interesting phenomenon, you know. And he's dead, but he never came out.
No, but everybody knew. Come on.
I mean, it's like queer in plain sight. It's
right.
So
it's a great saying. Yes, that's perfect.
Which is great. I mean, I loved him, and I love anything that Madam was on. Wade and Blazing Flowers and Madam.
Yes.
And Madam was probably on Hollywood Squares the most.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's where I know. I think Madam would really shine is in Hollywood Squares.
Yes, for sure. And get away with stuff they couldn't elsewhere.
Well, Madam really led the charge to like RuPaul's Drag Race, because you know they say so much in RuPaul's Drag Race that it flies over the head of the like sort of mainstream audience.
But
when
we
you're
know, yes.
When you're in the know, I can't believe some of the things they say. I'm like, how can you get away with that? But nobody knows what it means, and so that's like queer coded. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is our little secret language.
Which we've had to have before. Like it's like we've always had to live in secrecy.
Right.
So this wave of homophobia now, it's really interesting because they really don't know us.
Right. Although they watch Fire Island and they think they know us, right?
They know,
and
but
they
we get away with so much.
Right. So, do you think you'd make a good game show host?
I would make a great game show host.
Do you want to like invent a game, or do you want
I would love to do that. I mean, I think it's really fun. Like, I think it's just a fun pastime. I've always enjoyed being on them, and there's a couple of ones that I play on pretty regularly that I just love. Okay. So, you know, yes, sign me up.
Oh, great. Okay. So I happen to I brought your 2005 book with me because I was thinking about how prescient it was. You write about LGBTQ+, you write about race, you write about feminism, you wrote women in choice, and that book was from 2005. And here we are in even worse shape in terms of those categories. Yeah. So do you feel like you sort of, you didn't predict the future, but are you kind of disappointed that things are still this way?
I am, but also that we have gotten better too. There's certain areas where we really have done a lot of progress, like in pronouns. This is a really important thing for me because now everybody who engages in business has to talk about pronouns, which is this very large blanket acknowledgement of the non-binary community, the gender non-conforming community, the trans community, everything that they're so afraid of us like changing the pronouns because it's like we're actually regulating the way that we talk about society, which is such a big deal.
It is a big step. Yeah.
That's why they're attacking the queer community in that regard with all the anti-trans bills and all the like the restroom stuff.
Right.
That's where they're trying to fight it because they're trying to pick and like henpeck all these little things. Right. Because we've made such a big victory there.
Right, and they don't want to lose control. It's all about control.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible. Do you think you have another book in you? Do you think you?
I think so. I mean, I want to write a big, kind of a definitive story of Hollywood in terms of my experience and the queer Asian experience from the 90s on. So that's my ultimate goal, is to write the sort of like history, the herstory. So that's happening in my own like slow time. That's happening.
Okay. With book banning at an all-time high, what would it mean to you to have one of your books banned? Is that like?
Well, that's just so fabulous. I mean, I would be so excited, but also like, the right really have no business banning books. They really,
They can't even read books.
They have terrible grammar all the time. Some of the spelling. If you did a spell check on Parler, you would be on there all day. Like obviously they just never check it.
Very true. Very true. So we're speaking shortly before you're scheduled to go on at the Parker here in Fort Lauderdale. And do you have any like pre-show rituals that you do that you wouldn't mind sharing? Or
I don't really have a ritual. I mean, I don't really do anything like, except sometimes I'll just sort of think about like, oh, what am I doing? Like, you know, maybe if there's something that's happened recently, you know, then I'll look through news stuff. But I'm always kind of on there anyway. But I work so much that it's sort of like, it's just sort of a daily part of my life. So I don't have any ritual really.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm so grateful that I got to talk to you again, and it's been really fun. And thank you very much, and we can't wait to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.